Well, it sucks. And you see the shape. The shape of absolute horror. Yes, my name is Daniel Mayo and I have autism. But why don't you look at this shape for a little bit? And if you're autistic, you will recognize it. If you're not, then why don't you look at this bulge of head that is, of a brain. Okay, so you think, okay, so why does the brain size matter? Because in my brain size, in my head, my brain is bigger than just about everyone else's. My head is bigger than just about everyone else's. So why should this matter? Well, as it turns out, something, I don't know what it is, but something made my brain lose itself, get disorganized, get loose and bigger, and basically, I don't know, it's like the brain is bigger, but it's much more loose inside. Not tighter than anything else, but the loosest part of our brain is right over here. And our autistic brain is very much damaged and very loose. Extremely loose, big. Mass, big, and all that. And, I think the reason of that happening is something made the brain not function very well, or let's just say that this should have been like this, and I don't know if you can see it, but this should have been like this, and unfortunately, since our brains are pretty much swollen and loose, and basically it's bigger than it should be. It's also disorganized and every bad aspect of a swollen brain. It could also mean that the waters, could be some sort of water or liquid that went to our brain, or to fix our brain. Just like it's just somehow the knitting of a brain could barely knit at all because of what went inside of the mother's womb. I mean, it's like, I don't know, the memory aspect of the area. Some aspects of the memory is so big that, of course, unfortunately, consequently, the wording memory is not there, but fortunately the mass of the brain had to be big and swollen and loose and big. So once it unties itself, that's what it does. It basically had untied itself. It's my fingerprint in here. It's also plastic, but my brain is I don't know. But it's basically, I mean, when I was a child, my brain was not a sponge. It was just a, learner's tool. You could not teach it everything. You just had to teach it a special way. But on the other hand, in the physical aspect, my brain was a pure sponge. So, in some ways, I believe we're just, animals, mainly. Because, even the animals, well, let's just say that, we as autistic, we have people that have autism, we don't have fewer brain cells, we have fewer pathways in our brain. But animals also have fewer pathways in their brain. But their brain is much smaller. And unfortunately, our brain is only as efficient as birds. It's only as efficient as birds. And let me tell you something. Birds have a special brain power. It's called nits, and mainly they're not masses like ours. They're just balls of rope. Not rope. Balls of fabric. It's like balls of fabric. That's how birds learn and all that. And they only know the simple stuff. Birds are not social creatures. That's all I can say. They only know by violence. They only know by territory, and they only know by their feeling of magnetic particles. And like they only know by particles in the magnetic parts in the back, and they know by memory of what the place looks like. Birds actually have very good memory of what the place looks like and what the path looks like. So did I. Isn't this scary? But the scary thing is that I practically function like an animal that knew its path, but not as well, but still functioned like an animal. And just as I am going back and forth in a straight line, the animals did that same thing too. So, just because of that memory aspect of our mind, unfortunately, that knitting, like a cotton ball, our brains are swollen and it's very loosey tied and big, and it's a bulge that is not supposed to be a bulge. It's also damaged and functioning like animals. And unfortunately, as I function like a dog or function like a bird, it just doesn't make sense. But this bulge has something to do with the human aspect not being there and everything else just being there. Even though I call myself a great, brilliant child of God, but there is no disease on earth that describes animal better as a human form as autism. So, and I'm going to be brutal, and I know I'm going to be evangelical about this, but this is the truth. Our brains are very much different, but it's only damaged and swollen and untied. So, if you like having your sorry about that, but if you like having that term Asperger or Aspie or anything like that, just know that you're just like an animal. Your animal instinct says, I like being called that because that's my way of the body. But that's just not natural, guys. Some sort of chemical, I don't know what it is. Not I don't think it's a vaccine, because some sort of disease or chemical has caused this. And I think it's something to do with plastic. Not sure what it is. But I do know that my mom originally had a microwave at home. I don't know what that has to do with that, but she had a lot of plastic items when I was just born. And that doesn't have anything to do with autism, I think. Just saying that my mom back then was, on the side of, well, it doesn't matter what chemical we use, but it matters. I don't know. I think it had something to do with my family history, but I don't know. Still, as an Aspie, something happened. Something went wrong. Some sort of acid got into our minds, and we have to get rid of that acid somehow. If it's something in cars, we might just have to get rid of it. Might be something we don't even recognize. Like what we build the houses out of. I mean, there might be a way of making glass. I know there's a whole lot of acids somewhere that's causing autism. Now, Just saying that my Lego blocks were. They're saying my Lego blocks was the cause of it. Yes? Just saying that my Lego blocks was the cause of it. I don't think that would be the case, but we don't know. We have to check some sort of acid that did that. Because I think that only acid tears apart. And only alkaline brings together. So, and of course it hardens and breaks it, so our bodies have to be either, a little bit of acid and a little bit of alkaline, or it's not good at all. So, as an aspie, I believe our bodies were too acidic when we were born. Just saying. And now we have to live with this horrible disease that swells our brain, breaks it, swells it up, unties it, and makes our brains big and make us think less. I mean, everything went wrong in our brain, and people don't know what's going on. It's like a panicked mad lab scientist who has a burning foundation of his lab, and everything is going to explode in. Basically, if his lab explodes, then he will die, and basically the whole city block will blow up. Let's think of it this way. Tesla had an object that was yay big from the camera. It was, let's say, that big. It shook blocks of the city of New York City. There was a small tremor in New York City in some areas, and medium tremor in medium earthquake. Not earthquake, but it was noticeable for everyone. People were feeling the earthquake all over New York City. And Tesla he ended up having to smash that little thing that was causing the earthquake. He was smashing it, saying, what was that saying? Not good, not good, not good. And he pretty much smashed it, and he stopped it. And police were all over him and saying, what on earth are you experimenting on? That's pretty much what they said, I believe. But he said, I was experimenting on something secret. And you don't need to know what I'm experimenting on, except you need to know that I'm a mad scientist and I experiment on the electricity. And that got him into a little bit of trouble, but he knew not to experiment with that kind of thing ever again. They didn't have any more problems, I believe. So, yeah. But again, we have to find what we've done wrong with our experiment. Our brains are not experiments, but something is experimenting with our brain. I believe something with autism, something that is basic. I think I would say that a person with autism is different than a person with Asperger's. A clean person with Asperger's would function like, let's say, Albert Einstein. Mr. Einstein had a different brain, but he was functional. But then there was those that were not functional in the institutions. Basically, these people were autistic, but they could base it off of Germany. Something with plastic would be my guess, because that's when they were experimenting with plastics and find plastic suitable for us. And there's all kinds of plastics out there. And that includes this lamppost with this plastic. There's plastic in there. Then there's this plastic. This plastic. Even this is made out of plastic. This white part right here, what I'm holding on to. I mean, there's hard plastic, soft plastic, plastic bags, plastic fabric, all kinds of plastic, polyester, and everything like that. So, Is all plastic bad? I mean, it can suffocate. It takes all the oxygen out. I mean, who knows? Maybe all the plastic, all those Legos were literally, were suffocating the air inside the house that was old and caused, more problems with my sister, which she was a little crazy. And then there was me. I was born with autism because the air was more suffocated. And not to mention that this whole air inside, I can barely breathe inside, and there's so much suffocation inside this house. So I think there has to be something to do with plastic dust. That we have to get rid of plastic somehow. And I mean plastics everywhere, and cords and all that. So, I mean, we're running out of plastic, but that's just, all the suffocation causing the brain to swell and untie itself, and then the memory part not being impacted. Unfortunately, the parts that are not impacted are the memory parts, and I remember everything. So, yeah. Basically, something is untying our brains and causing our brains to swell, and it's breaking our brains and tearing our brains apart, and that's causing autism. And I'm pretty sure it's the fact, because I read an article about that, and I thought, well, it's not functioning as well as it should. But then there are those parts that I was like, oh, this is a study based off of some people. I mean, it's basically commented by someone back in 2002, 2001, and 2014, all the way up to then, all the way up to then. So if you're proud of your brain being big, swollen, broken, and untied, and suffocated, then they should be proud of that. But then you're brain like an animal, because you don't have a human aspect of the brain. You just have animals. So, animals fight and kill. Do you like that? Do you like being as simple as an animal? As simple as a sparrow that just is so special and fights all the time? And so territorial and gets eaten? Not to mention they only eat seeds, and they barely can taste. And the spicy food tastes good to them. And also, they have beaks. They have little feet. The only awesome part about them is they can fly. But it's like they have no freedom. We have no freedom. So all we can do is have our one thing that we're really good at. For me, it's preaching, and for me, it's talking to you guys online. But that's all I can do. Just remember that, folks, okay? It's pretty much what I'm going to have to say about this, because, autism is a really sad disease. It really is. You should see the worst cases of autism, because they can't talk, they have no freedom, they drool on food, they put their faces on the food and just drool and eat it, and eat on the plates like this. I mean, come on. The worst case of an autistic person is like a vegetable that has no freedom, and they have a tube down their throat, and a tube coming out of their, and they have to be in a wheelchair. And they go to the bathroom all the time. Do you want that? Is that your disease that you really are proud of? I hope not. Anyway, I'll be done. It's about time up, and, I want you to think about that, okay? And if your brains are too big, and too untied, and too swollen, I guess you're going to have to think really hard about this. Because I already did. Alright, I'll be done now, okay? Bye.